Welcome to The Fairer Sense.
With me, Tanya.
And me, Kara.
Women, money, and the fight to break even.
Because we give a shit, and so should you. Today, we're talking about the economics of motherhood. Hey, Tanya.
Hey, Kara.
I'm so excited about today's episode because this is very near and dear to my heart personally, but also due to my age. Some people in my life are beginning to talk about having kids and become moms, and I'm like, whoa, we're there. It's happening. So this episode feels very relevant as well as very personal.
It's interesting because at the same time, this is also really the first topic that we have stepped into that neither of us have direct personal experience with. So yeah, it's interesting because I think folks who've been listening for a while may recall that I'm child-free totally by choice, although I do have some genetic stuff in my background that has perhaps colored my sense of whether I ever wanted to have kids, because I've just known since a young age that I didn't want to pass any bad genes on. And then Kara, you're child-free mostly by choice, but also there's a money element to that.
Yeah, I never really wanted kids. I think you can ask anyone in my family, and I knew from an early age that it probably wasn't for me. And now that I am in my childbearing years, I still feel that way. And certainly, as I mentioned on an episode in season 1, having a kid, at least right now, would be pretty financially, I don't want to say devastating, but it would be very hard for me. Yeah, we are not moms, but we are talking to 2 moms today about being a mother, the economics of being a mom, and navigating work while being a mom.
You guys know we love talking about the wage gap, but the stats for moms are so much more tragic. Tragic is the wrong word because it makes it sound like moms are victims, and that's not at all what we mean, but just I'll read some numbers for you and you'll see what I mean here. So if you compare moms to white dads and you assume that white dads make $1 on average, the wage gap is pretty horrifying. So Asian American and Pacific Islander moms make 85 cents on the dollar. They're doing the best. Moms overall make 71 cents on the dollar, which is pretty similar to just kind of the male-female wage gap. Generally, 70 cents on the dollar is about the average. But when you look at women of color, moms of color, and single moms, it gets horrifying. So white moms are making 69 cents on the dollar to white dads overall. Single moms are making 55 cents. Black moms, 51 cents. Native American moms, 49 cents. And Latina moms, 46 cents. Less than half of what dads overall are making. And to me, this just feels like something that can't go on this way. Women are more than half of the economy now. We make a huge amount of the purchasing decisions. And when you're talking about the people carrying a lot of the caregiver duties for the next generation, seeing all of these kids then growing up in poverty, all of this translates into bigger picture stuff. So women have a much higher likelihood of being in poverty generally, but especially moms. And this is a problem. This is a huge issue that we need to tackle, regardless of how you feel about children. This is not about kids on some level at all. It's about broader social economic equity.
And when you take into consideration the fact that women are the majority of minimum wage earners in the United States, and minimum wage is $7.25 an hour, the federal minimum wage, there are some states where it's higher, to think, oh my gosh, if you're a woman of color working for $7.25 an hour and you become a mom and you're getting that penalty, you are literally living off of dollars. And that's insane. That is totally crazy. Why? Why are we making it so hard for people?
The stuff that I think frustrates me the most is that none of this stuff exists in a vacuum. So a lot of the folks who refuse to raise the minimum wage, for example, or refuse to create mandatory maternity leave when women give birth are some of the same people who then get angry that so many folks are on quote unquote welfare. You've got all these folks who will say okay, well, we're not going to pay people more or actually give them ways to care for their children or to be home with them when they're born, but we're going to be really pissed at them for then needing help. That to me is such circular logic that we have got to, in your words, Kara, burn with fire.
Yes, burn it to the ground. And yeah, it really does drive me nuts. As I've mentioned, I grew up in a single parent household. My mother raised my siblings and I, and we were on food stamps for 5 or 6 years. And without that assistance, I honestly don't know where we would have been and what my life would have looked like. But as a result of that assistance and also some assistance from family members, I never went hungry and I always had a place to live. And it did enable us to, my mom went back to school to get her master's in education. She became a teacher. She started making good money and had very good health care. And my childhood was fine. And now my mom is fine as she is heading into retirement. She has enough money to retire. But without those programs, these people like my mom, like myself, and like millions of others who are in an even worse off position than we were, they don't get to the good place. I mean, people need help. And you're totally right, Tanya. Like, we are creating these circumstances where people need help and then yelling at people for trying to access that help. There is such shame around poverty too. People walk around carrying shame when you have to use food stamps at the grocery store or something. No one wants to do that because we make it so hard for people.
Yeah. And even now with food stamps usually being on a debit card, I still stand behind folks at the grocery store who are trying to use them. And it is a hassle. And you can see the embarrassment that they feel, especially if there's a line behind them. And yeah, that stuff is such a problem. And you think about then the kids who are observing that and what they're internalizing and what that's going to do for them, for their lives. We could have easily made this episode about the economics of parenthood, and we very deliberately did not. Obviously, this is a show about women and money, but beyond that, there is actually a lot of gendered stuff that goes into women as parents and money, not just people as parents and money. And I'm a great example of that. So like you grew up with a single mom getting public assistance, which is what I think we can just shorthand as sort of like the kind of public assistance you're supposed to feel ashamed of being on. I grew up with a single parent who was on public assistance, but my single parent was my dad. And he was on assistance because he was disabled and was determined by the Social Security Administration and the VA to be permanently disabled. So he got disability unemployment insurance through his former employer and their insurance company. He got Social Security income, SSD, and then he was eligible to be on Medicare. So we weren't on Medicaid, we weren't getting food stamps, we weren't getting the shame kind of public assistance. And a lot of that was because he's a man, not a woman, and because he'd had a good career before he was forced to stop working and just be full-time disabled. And that's worth acknowledging. And I'm super grateful for that. I'm so grateful for social safety nets. I will forever be a huge defender of them and fight anyone who says that, oh, people who are on disability are just lazy and don't want to work. Like, I'm sorry, but that's freaking false. But I do think that there is an important gender dynamic that really perpetuates a lot of this stuff. Like if women are in lower wage jobs, they're going to have fewer social security credits, which means that if they do get to a point where they're disabled and can't work, they're not going to be able to support themselves on that, or they're more likely to have jobs that wouldn't have given them disability insurance to begin with, so that they're going to then have to go to those like shame-feeling safety net programs that we didn't have to resort to. So that's just kind of the big picture. That's my like rant about public assistance and how we stigmatize certain types more than others in very gendered ways, and why we're specifically today talking about motherhood and not parenthood.
Yeah, and it's actually interesting. We're speaking with two mothers, neither of whom are on public assistance.
Yes.
Both of whom are making a very good living. We wanted to bring this up because it's always worth talking about. And I love that we both feel comfortable sharing our experiences with it. And we encourage y'all to share your experiences with us as well, whether with public assistance or parental leave in some way, or being a mom. But I do feel strongly that this is a topic that sometimes gets attention. I feel like it comes in and out of the public eye, but I'm excited that we're turning our eyes here at the Fair Sense to it today.
Even though we obviously spent the first chunk of today talking about poverty and public assistance, and that's certainly not representing the full spectrum of moms at all. It doesn't mean, however, that women who are doing very well, who have really high-powered careers, that they aren't also being penalized. It's just that we see the stats very, very clearly when you're talking about poorer women. But this is absolutely something that happens at all levels. Women make up more than half of the workforce at this point, but we still make up less than 10% of CEOs. We make up less than 30% of executive leadership, less than 30% of Congress, and a high percentage of women are moms. So a lot of this stuff is connected, and we should probably just jump right into it.
I spoke with Jamila Souffrant from Journey to Launch, who has 3 kids. She is married and is currently working in corporate America on the East Coast. She also runs the very successful podcast Journey to Launch, as well as the website Journey to Launch. And I was super excited to talk to her about being a mother of 3 and how she manages family finances as well as a demanding career.
Motherhood has really caused me to put so much more effort into someone else. So you have like these little people that are depending on you, and they need to eat and they need to be cared for. And you want to make sure that they have a safe environment to thrive in. And so that's our responsibility as parents. So as a mom, it's my responsibility. And then with finances, it's changed a lot because before kids, we were able to take more risk. If we had money and I wanted to invest in something or try something out, it was easier to do that because we didn't have little kids depending on us. Or when I thought about maybe not working or switching jobs, it seemed like an easier thought because if we did that and it didn't work, the only people affected would be myself and possibly my husband. Now with kids, there's so much more riding on my success and making money because I want to make sure that they're provided for. So it definitely has made me more cautious and more of a planner.
So tell us about your past maternity leaves. How do you go about getting on? Like, do you have to apply for maternity leave? And what has your experience been leaving the workforce and then getting back into it?
My first child, because he was my first, I was super excited. I wanted to take as much time off as possible. I did not care about not getting paid or time off or what it would do to my career. I was so focused on this is my first and I just want to spend as much time with him as possible. And I do work in corporate America. And so the company that I work for is at the time they had pretty decent policies. They've improved actually even more since then, which has been great. So typically how it works where I work is that depending on the type of birth you have, you get 6 or 8 weeks. So if you have a vaginal birth, it's 6 weeks off. If it's a C-section, you get 8 weeks off. And then at the time with my first, they give you 2 weeks on top of that of paid parental leave. And so you have about 2 to 2.5 months of paid leave just through your job or disability, I should say, is part of that is a disability. And then you can take vacation days on top of that. But what was really nice is that they have a 6-month FMLA program where your job would be somewhat protected for 6 months. So if you took a leave of absence and it was approved by your manager, you can take it up to 6 months. And it's actually for anyone. So not just someone who was giving birth. Anyone could request this. And if their manager said, okay, technically they can save your job or a similar job. So that way, when you came back at the end of the 6 months, you'd have something. And so I used part of that to take a full 6 months off with my first son. Some of that, though, was not paid. So actually, a lot of it wasn't paid. So for the first few weeks, the first couple months, it was paid through the other scenarios I talked about earlier. But a lot of it at the back end wasn't. But at that time, I didn't care because I was so interested and wanted to just be with him. With my second son, it was even a better policy. They actually increased their 2-week parental paid leave to 8 weeks. So that was amazing because, it was like, that's another 2 months of paid leave that my company gave. So now I have 8 weeks of maternity leave through my job because I had a C-section with the first and second. And then I had an additional 8 weeks of paid parental leave. So that's 4 months of paid time off that I got with my second son. And, by then because I experienced not working and not having that income, and I realized how much it set us back a little bit as a family, I decided not to take as much time off. And I believe I only took about 4.5, 5 months off at that time. I came right back when I did not lose any money. So I came back as soon as the vacation days ran out and I was going to not get paid. So I kind of weighed the pros and cons and figured out that it was just best for me to not lose out on money going forward and go back earlier.
I've got so many questions. So do you know why they changed the policy? Was that a result of parents being like, hey, we need more time off?
I really don't know why they changed it. I suspect that it definitely was some pushback and they were trying to be more progressive and help the women out because, in corporate America, in the field I'm in general, just investments, it's hard, so I do think they want to work with working parents.
With your second child, when you did go back a little earlier, how did you feel? Because I've read all these articles about women who, if you have a difficult birth, or even if you don't, giving birth to a child is a big thing for your body.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they go back after 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and physically they're still tired or still recovering from the trauma of birth, or they're having to breastfeed at work or pump, I guess, at work. I mean, what was your transition like back into the office?
I couldn't imagine having to go back after only like 4 or 6 or 8 weeks right after birth. I think is just crazy, because I know how it felt, especially, no matter what type of birth you have, it's just hard. And so I know a lot of women, though, have to do that and they don't have a choice. But luckily, even though I took a shorter time with my second son, it still was longer than what I would say probably the average woman gets. So it worked out to be like 4.5 months, which still to me, like in the grand scheme of things, to me still isn't enough. But at least it wasn't me having to go back after only a month or 2.
Yeah, it's such a delicate balance. And I think some women would say an impossible balance between being a new mother and having those responsibilities and doing work. It's a crazy physical demand as an outsider. I say that as an outsider. And so I assume you have friends who are mothers. Study after study shows that motherhood is a huge financial penalty for women. They take time out of the workforce, and when they go back, they don't get promoted in the same way. Their money is penalized somehow. When you're kind of talking to your friends, do women have stories like this? Do you hear this from other moms?
So technically, especially if you're working in like a corporate environment and they have year-end reviews, they typically like to measure what you did in that year. And so it's easier for them to say, well, if you weren't here for 4 months, 5 months. I mean, it happened to me, especially it was more obvious with my first pregnancy that, I wasn't there the full year. And so they only measured what I did while I was there. And so that affected my bonus. So I didn't get as much as I would have gotten if I was there for the whole year. And then, of course, I have friends who are not in corporate America, who are teachers or who are just working in public service, and they don't get as much time or benefits, and they have to go back earlier. And even teachers, which I think is crazy, they definitely don't get enough time off. So it definitely affects like how much money they can bring home and what they're able to provide.
Oh my gosh, that kind of drives me insane. What happened to you with the bonus? I'm like, do not punish her for having a child. She needs more money. She just brought a life into this world. My mom is a teacher, and she didn't start teaching until after she had all of her kids, but she was employed part-time while having us. And we were really low income for a while. And that was kind of a lot of factors, but certainly these policies. So I'm just curious about, as a mom, as a woman in the workforce, how you feel, like what direction do you want to see the U.S. go in terms of maternal, paternal leave and how we're handling parenthood in the workforce?
And I'm glad you brought up paternal leave, because even in my company now, men only get 2 weeks of paternal leave. And so I think it should be more than that. I mean, I'm not suggesting they get as much time as the mom that just gave birth, but I do believe that it's very important for men to bond and spend time with their child too, and to help mom out. And they should get more time than just 2 weeks of paid leave for that. I would say my existing company is going towards the right direction in giving more time, more paid time off. I think what's important is the paid time off, because it's great. Like if, a company gives you maybe like a 6-month leave, but it's not paid, that helps with bonding, but it's not going to help if you're bonding and stressed out about money. So I'd love to see more guaranteed minimum paid leave for women, and then also longer time off, paid time off also for men. So that way the family structure can also be, it's you're nurturing and you're bonding as a family together.
Oh my gosh. I love all of that. I completely agree.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you're working full time in corporate America, but you've also got a thriving podcast and a thriving blog. And I know you've really been wanting to keep the option open of
maybe making this a full-time thing. I guess kind of what's next? You're going to have this baby. How are you figuring out your finances moving forward for your family?
Having a child, it definitely, for me, it made me more cautious and aware of my finances. I wanted to make sure that, we had a plan, and that's true. But having children, for me at least, also has instilled an incredible drive to want more from life and to follow my dreams and to be happy, because I do realize that, I want to be a happy mom so I can be a better mom. And if I'm not happy in my career, or if, I'm stressed out because of the commute, or I'm not doing something that I truly, truly love, I do believe that affects my behavior as a mom. And so while motherhood has definitely made me more cautious and more caring about others and babies, now I smile when I see other babies, it has made me more ambitious. And I want to show them, I want to show my kids that they should follow their passions. And yes, they still need to consider how they're going to put food on the table and feed themselves, but it's really about following their passions. And I want to be an example of that. I'm really hoping that one day I can turn Journey to Launch into my full-time thing, because I'm so passionate about helping people with their finances and talking about this subject and bringing financial independence to the masses and to more people. So I am just at this point building up myself and our finances so that I have options. If I decided that, I can step away from my career, or my full-time job, I should say, right now, to focus on my passion, I want to be able to say and do that, even if I'm just trying it out for a couple of years. So we're really just being a bit smarter with how we're saving and the accounts we're saving. So that way it's almost, like our FU fund that we want to save up. So that way I can make that decision whenever that time comes.
So, as you know, we have monetized this podcast, and we strive to work with sponsors that have the same values that we do. We're not taking money from people who punch puppies and fire women for getting pregnant.
One such cool company is AutoSlash. Raise your hand if you've ever rented a car and hated the experience. Oh my God, I have so many times. But AutoSlash makes it better. They figure out the best coupons and discount codes to get you the lowest rate possible, and then track prices on your rental right up until the day you pick up the car.
If they find a lower rate, they email you so you can lock in the savings. And it's the #1 site for cheap car rentals, so it's perfect for anyone trying to save money. And AutoSlash works with all the major rental companies like Hertz, Avis, and Thrifty. Plus, super awesome bonus, renters save an average of 30% or more when they use AutoSlash.
Since they track coupons before you book and compare rates after you book, AutoSlash ensures you get the best deal. Save yourself the time and the money by letting them do the heavy lifting. Head to autoslash.com to check out some of their deals today.
I also spoke with Corina Frankie, who is the CEO and founder of a company called Brand Besties, which is an event company that provides support staff, and it's nationwide. She started it 8 years ago here in Austin, and she's had wonderful success with it. She is also a single mom of a 3-year-old. So I talked to her about how she did things like design her own maternity leave as the CEO and life as a single mom.
I think what I did is I really looked at it as, what was the workload looking like and how much did I think that I could handle? And granted, I believe that I'm Superwoman and I can do it all, but I knew that wasn't going to be the case, and that I needed to plan for the worst situation, which was me not having any time and energy to continue the growth of my company. So I looked into the Austin market for either a brand ambassador who was strong, that I trusted, or someone else who was a field manager working for another agency who might want to partner with me on a few projects. And so what I did is I figured out what our long-term projects were, what the big projects were, and I only accepted those during this time. And then I incentivized the person working with me through bonuses. She basically made a really nice chunk of money from the contracts that she was working, plus pay, obviously. So when I had my son, she was put in charge of running the business for the short amount of time that I was out.
Do you remember how much time you took away? You stepped away?
I work from home and I pretty much make my entire schedule. I was working, I think, right away. I wasn't romantic about having time off with my child. I spent so much time with him. I breastfed my son for 2 years. We had lots of bonding moments and experiences. And for me, being romantic about the time off was not extremely important because he was with me 100% every step of the way. I think I took off like a total of 7 days, like entirely, where I just had no contact. And then I started picking up the computer when he was in naps and, making phone calls when he was sleeping. And so, yeah, I was like right back in, excited to be working and participating and, engaging with my team.
Oh my gosh, you really are Wonder Woman, because that's like 7 days. Oh my God, I can't believe that.
You think I'm a Wonder Woman? I look at the women that work 8 to 5 and I say, you are Wonder Woman because you have to be somewhere at a certain time. I have all the luxury and freedom in the world through my business. I've created this business for myself. It wasn't like I did not work for it. I worked for this lifestyle. And I'm so grateful that I have it because it is very challenging, I can tell, for the women who have to get up and work that 8 to 5 schedule.
In your life, is money... Is it a stressor? Is it a motivator? What is money to you? And then what is money to your life as a single mom?
I have very strong beliefs about money, and they were different than the beliefs that I grew up with. My beliefs today is that money comes easy, that I have plenty of it, and that money is money. And so I say that because growing up in the family that I was raised in, money was always such a stressor in our life. Like, I used to believe that my mom would get sick. She would go to the doctor and nothing was wrong with her. And I used to tell her, stop sleeping with the bills under your bed. My mom literally would like have boxes of bills that she would put in shoe boxes and then stick them under her bed. And then she would sleep there. And at a young age, I thought, I'm like, if the doctors can't find anything wrong with you, you're making yourself sick because you're sleeping on top of all of those bills that we had. And so the beliefs in my family were that money doesn't grow on trees, that the rich get rich and the poor get poorer. And so moving into college, I just had all these like really crazy beliefs around money. And then I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That's a whole another story when I was about 18 years old and I learned about the 4 money quadrants and it changed my entire life and it started to change my beliefs about money. So these days when I see a penny, I pick it up and I say, I'm so grateful for you, penny. And I do that because I want more pennies to come into my life. And the only way to do that is to be grateful that you found a penny or that you have a penny.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely also grew up with a mindset of money is really hard to come by and it's for other people. It's not really for me. I'm always kind of going to be broke and like that's life. And now, right? Yeah, it's crazy. And now working in finance and running my own business, it has been a total mindset shift to say, I can earn money. Money comes easily to me. I'm good with money because I spent 20 years saying, I'm not good with money. How are you? I know your son's only 3, but are you talking about money or how do you behave around him when it comes to money?
Recently, this kind of came up and I thought, these are the things that I want to chat with his dad about not saying in these moments, because my son, oftentimes he's getting to that age where he wants a bag of potato chips or he wants the ball or he wants the little stuffed animal at the end of a checkout line. And I have to tell him, I say, Ari, mommy earns this money and mommy has the right to choose what she does with this money. And right now, mommy doesn't want to buy this bag of potato chips. And so I'm telling him because I don't want to create the stories that my parents created for me growing up. I want him to know that yes, your mother does have this money, but she gets to choose what she wants because she earned it. And right now she doesn't feel like buying you a bag of potato chips. And sometimes when I say that, I say, but mommy feels like buying you some brand new socks. Do you want to pick out socks with me? I give him choices and options, but I let him know that, this is just my money and I want to do what I want with it.
I think that's so awesome. I'm like wiggling with joy over here because, for people who have backgrounds like us and for lots of other people who, even if they have a ton of money in their family, but their parents never talk about it, it just becomes a weird thing. And it's not always a bad weird thing, but it just becomes an uncomfortable weird thing. And so what you're doing to say, money is a choice and I'm choosing to make this choice or I'm choosing not to. It's very in line with how you say you already deal with money. And I think it's so great because it's teaching your son that money exists around us to use as a tool, not that money is just a big bag of emotions, most of them negative. It's just a tool that we can use to get those pretzels or not.
Yes, absolutely. Exactly. Money is money. It's nothing else. It is what it is.
I feel like every other day I'm reading an article about how expensive kids are. Are kids super expensive? And how did your lifestyle costs change when you had your son? And how do you manage that in your budget?
I appreciate this question. And it goes back even before I had kids. I've always had this idea that things come easy to me, that I can handle anything, that I am, responsible. So these ideas of who I am and how I handle situations has manifested in everything that I do in my life. So having a kid and raising a kid is not expensive. And that is my belief. I believe when moms say that it is really hard or that it is really expensive, I believe them because it's all about your set of circumstances in that moment. And for some people, it just really is hard, like for some mothers, they don't have the income to create this experience for their child. And so it's much more challenging for them. For me, because I believe everything comes easy and that kids are not expensive, it's not that I have a lot of money and that I'm just like buying everything. The circumstances are that my older sister also has a kid that's like close in age. And so I got all the clothes from year 1 to 3, the hand-me-downs, because he was like 4 months older and they grew out of clothes very quickly. And then I created this like whole tribe of moms that recycle clothing to one another. I didn't keep the clothes or sell them. I gave them to another mom who could use them. I think, our 2 biggest expenses right now are his Montessori school. I mean, it's literally like a mortgage payment, and his Pampers.
I love your attitude of I welcome money into my life, but I'm also smart with knowing when and where I want to spend my money. Like, I don't need to buy my son brand new clothes when there are clothes that I can keep out of a landfill that my friends have. What I really liked about talking with both Jamila and Corina is that they're both killing it in separate ways, and they have faced challenges as parents, but they have overcome them. And we definitely started this episode with some bummer facts about what it's like to be a working mom. But what I love is that both of these women have accepted these challenges and in many ways conquered them.
Totally. I find both of their stories so inspiring, and it's a good reminder that the patriarchy doesn't always have to beat us down. Like, all these facts can be out there. The deck can be stacked against us in certain ways, and people can still find a way to go out there and conquer the world. And I love hearing stories like both of theirs.
Yeah, something that I thought was really interesting and markedly different between both of them was obviously Jamila, working in her corporate job, had to go through her company's maternity policy. And it was cool that they changed the policy to better benefit parents. But Corina got to design her own. And I know she felt very ready to get back to work after just 7 days and wanted to be involved in running her company. But it did strike me a little bit, and I think I'm very aware of this as a small business owner, that you don't really get time off. And if you build protection into your company for yourself and your workers, that's awesome. But sometimes that's not always a possibility. And so there is that risk. I see it as a risk in being a small business owner, where if I choose to have a child and run this business, that's just I'm loading up my plate even more, which seems kind of unfair, but also kind of what else do you do?
I have way too much to say about this for someone who is not a mom. So please, moms out there, forgive me. I am not trying to speak for you. I'm just speaking as a person in the world who tries to keep my eyes open as much as I can. But to your point, yeah, there are so many jobs where you get penalized. And especially if you work for yourself, you get penalized for taking any time off. If it's sick time, if it's vacation, especially a big chunk of time to care for a newborn. And that's stuff that matters. Like, this is totally not a mom thing, but for years, my side hustle was teaching yoga and spinning classes, and I got paid per class. With both of those, when you're teaching spinning, especially when you're doing what I did and you're teaching 6 classes a week, you get hurt all the freaking time. Like, I had tendonitis flare up, my knees would get weird, like my back would hurt, and sometimes I just needed to take a class off. Well, guess what? If I was injured because of teaching that class, I then didn't get paid because I had to sub it out and then someone else got paid. That's something that for me, it was okay. Like, I also had another job and I could afford to skip a class now and again. But I think about for someone who has a job like that, where that's their primary livelihood, or they work for themselves and they have to take that break. It's just a really weird way to structure society. Like, there are a lot of countries that give everyone money and a year time off. A lot of Northern Europe, Canada is so much more progressive than the US on this stuff. And even if you didn't have a job, you'd still get money to care for your child because they know that you can't be working during that time. Like, I don't understand why that's not something we can get our heads around. Another thing I just want to throw out there, one of my favorite comics right now is Ali Wong. And if you guys haven't watched her stand-up specials on Netflix, please do yourself a favor and do them. One of the things I love is she did both of her stand-up specials while hugely pregnant. She's this tiny Asian American woman. It just looks like she's got a basketball under her dress, but she still twerks around and is just an overall incredible human. But her first special is called Baby Cobra, and that was done when she was pregnant with her first child. And her second special is called Hard Knock Wife, that just came out this past spring. So please go watch those. But one of the things that I really love in Hard Knock Wife is she's talking about the question she gets a lot, which is Allie, how do you do it all? How do you balance everything? How do you have a career and still make time for your kids? And she just deadpan. She's like, I have a nanny. We try to put moms on this pedestal for doing it all when really so many of the people who are out there crushing it have help in some way. And the fact that we don't make it okay for moms to acknowledge that, I think, is a huge part of the problem too. So props to Allie for trying to lead the way and trying to destigmatize some of that stuff.
Oh, yeah. Have you ever seen those? It's supposed to be motivational, but it's you have the same number of hours in a day as Beyonce. And it's yes, that's true. But also Beyonce has hundreds of millions of dollars and a full-time support staff and a husband who is super wealthy. And so I don't have any of those things that make being Beyonce way easier.
I'm pretty sure Beyonce is not spending time in the evening doing the dishes and figuring out what laundry needs to happen. Exactly. If you have help, there is so nothing wrong with that, but just acknowledge it, because otherwise it's a theme we come back to again and again on the show. It just sort of shames people who don't get as much done, but also don't have as much help.
Absolutely. And going back to Corina's story, when she was talking about how she basically paid another woman to take on more work so that she could have more time with her son during her pregnancy, and then those 7 days she took off. I was I was so proud of her, because it was so awesome that she was able to be in a business position to pay someone more, to incentivize someone more. She was getting enough contracts to do that. But also, that was money that she was not getting because of her child. And so the motherhood penalty is still in play there. And certainly there are no easy answers, but it seems like there is an easier answer here, which is just to build in smart paternal leave policies into work in the United States.
I heard about a really interesting study recently. An economist looked at higher education, so colleges and universities, and looked at what happened when they instituted not just maternal leave policies, but actually broad parental leave policies, where men and women both got the same amount of time off when one partner had a child. And the super interesting thing about this is that in the end, women actually got penalized more under that situation, because in an effort to be progressive and give fathers time to be home as well, what was happening is then the dads were home, but they were getting a lot of work done. So they were actually getting sort of a mini sabbatical, because dads don't have to nurse. Dads might be taking care of the baby in other ways, but it's still less time consuming than if you are the milk machine. And so mothers were spending that time actually caring for their infant and doing mom things and trying to sleep, and dads were getting a lot of work done. So at the end of it, when they got back, then the dads had this productive period. The moms had gotten nothing done. And then the dads were more likely to get tenure or more likely to publish. And it's one of those things where it's interesting to see, clearly when those policies are put into place, they're put there out of good intentions and people who are trying to do the right thing, but then they end up backfiring. So I think it's to this same point. Like, we have to just keep trying things and then paying attention to the effects. Like, if that's not the answer, what is? Is the answer that we call them different things and we say, okay, dads, like, you can stay home, but we're going to charge you like a little bit of sabbatical time, or we're going to count it as a time when you're expected to be productive, or are we just going to like change our expectations and know like, hey, moms are just not going to be able to get as much done work-wise and shouldn't have to be judged on that same scale. Like, there probably need to be both some policy elements to it as well as just some sort of like psychological bits of understanding and empathy that go into some of these work and career decisions.
That is something that really bothers me, because it seems like in the United States, there is this resistance to trying things. You're totally right. You know, we have to try something, see how it works, and if changes need to be made, implement changes. And I feel like there is such a resistance to that, especially because of the idea of precedent, or that's the way we've always done things. And that's never a good reason for literally anything. You know, like, I watch a lot of legal dramas, and when they're like, well, it's precedent, it's so unacceptable to me. I think precedent is generally not a good idea for anything. And when you say something, well, that's the way we've always done it, I encourage people to actually look at how long something has been done that way and keep an open mind. Just because that worked in a different time and place doesn't mean it works now. And honestly, maybe it never worked, but it's just been in place for so long that you accept it, but accept that we can change things.
Yeah, and I think the precedent idea goes both ways, because you sometimes have situations like you're talking about where people say, well, this is just how it's been. And then you also have situations where folks say like, well, we'd like to try something, but we're afraid people will get attached to it, so we just won't even try. That's the worst possible reasoning. You know, I think that you have a time right now where a lot of the tech employers and some of the philanthropy employers, like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation was pretty famous for instituting a year of maternity leave, paid, you know, everything, like sort of exactly what we would all want. And then there were a couple of other employers, I think Netflix, I might be getting that wrong. There were several who kind of followed suit. And I do think that's putting pressure on others who want to be competitive in the marketplace to try to give better benefits. But I think we're still seeing a lot of folks like really holding on and saying like, okay, well, we'll give you 1 or 2 more weeks. And it's like, that's great, but really, like, we're talking in totally the wrong unit of measurement here. We need to be talking about months, not about days and weeks.
Co-signed.
We've just scratched the surface today, obviously, around motherhood and money and careers and economics. And of course, you're hearing 2 non-moms talk about it all, which we are very aware of. So we'd love to hear from you. Moms, shoot us notes. Tell us what you think. What did we miss? What did we leave out? We'd love to read some of your notes on a future episode and help expand this discussion. So you can email us, as always, at fairersense@gmail.com or tweet at us at fairersense.
Truly, please, especially around this topic, we really want to hear from you. You can also always leave us a review on iTunes, and you can leave a star review if you don't want to actually write something out, but we love the reviews, and especially if you have thoughts on episodes, we love to get feedback.
Yeah, we read every single review, and we sometimes even like squeal and do jazz hands when they're really lovely. So thank you to everyone who's left a review, and please keep them coming. They really help the show.
And to all the people who are currently moms, to all the people who are thinking of becoming moms, or becoming parents in general, we see you, we support you, and thank you for keeping the human race going.
Yeah, and we haven't said this at any other point today, but we're not just talking about people who give birth to children, although that is something that I have so much respect for and can't imagine personally doing. But for everyone who's a caregiver to a child, to people who adopt, to people who are foster moms, foster parents, we see you all. And really, even though it sounds like we're not personally wanting to do what you do, we have so much love and respect for it. And thank you.
To all the parents out there, stay rad.
Stay rad. The Fairer Sense are me, Tanya Hester, and the world's best co-host, Kara Perez. Our theme song is by The Insider, our ad music is by Kevin MacLeod, and you can find out more info about the other artists you hear on the show at our website, thefairersense.com. You can always find me at ournextlife.com and Kara at bravelygo.co.